Namaskar. I'm Aloka Parasher Sen, and my main interest as a historian is to look at the early history of India. And since my sojourn in Hyderabad for the last 40 years or so, I have exclusively devoted my attention into researching the early, or what one normally calls the pre medieval history of the Deccan. So this is a great opportunity for me, given to me by the FACE Foundation, because this is a wonderful platform for me to share my work. In particular, looking deep into the history of settlements in close proximity to the city of Hyderabad. So the theme, Hyderabad, the city of many stories, enables me to revisit some of my work, but more importantly, is to talk to you about urban landscapes that flourished around Hyderabad, beginning with as early as the early centuries of the Christian era. So, this is an amazing long term history of the region around Hyderabad, which very few people are aware of, but is something that I think is so integral to the way we look at Hyderabad as a city. So, since everybody knows, Hyderabad is an amazing city in terms of one very important um, theme, and that is that it is, if we talk about Hyderabad, what is typical is its diverse and multiple histories. And this is pretty well known. It's multilingual, it's multi religious, multicultural, and you name it. What I believe is that this thought of the city did not emerge suddenly. In fact, I would like to assert that the seminal traces of the city's archaeological profile, not very different from the way the contemporary view of the city with its multiple histories, uh, it's similar to that format. It's similar in content to that kind of characterization. So I would like to argue that we need to emphasize on the foundations of how this multi-cultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious ethos goes back several thousands of years. So, in other words, the dynamic multicultural ethos that defines the city we live in today was inherited and then added to by layers and layers of people and populations that came into this broad region in and around Hyderabad. Now, usually, when you look at history, people tend to want to talk about major political events. And these major political events usually showcase big monuments and huge monumental structures. However, since we are going to be looking at the archaeological record, there is something very unique about the archaeological record because this enables us to have a more broader history of the people as a whole. For example, the ingenuity and the skills of the people, the artifacts that they produced, the jewelry and other objects that they used, and so on and so forth. So that the pre-medieval settlements around Hyderabad, by not looking at major monuments or major political events, so to speak, gives us a kind of a vast panorama of the life of the people in these urban spaces, that is in pre-medieval times. Now, it is customary to begin the history of Hyderabad with the establishment of the present city by Muhammad Quli Qutub Shah towards the end of the 16th century. And everybody thinks that this was always the case, but this is a particular point in time when the city was consciously established by a ruler. And similarly, Sikandrabad too is a city that was planned and came into being at a particular point in time. But if we really think and ponder about it, most of Hyderabad and Sikandrabad were suburbs or even rural landscapes, hamlets, satellite townships that grew over a period of 400 years or so. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that uh, 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 what a urban landscape is, whether it's Hyderabad, Sikandrabad, or any other urban landscape, it naturally tends to accrue settlements to it, and over a period of time, there is a large conglomeration of settlements, which then becomes the major city of that region. And now you see, I'm located in what is, colloquially called Cyberabad. Now, technically, we are in Hyderabad. We have a pin code of Hyderabad. But what is Cyberabad? I mean, 40 years ago, when one inhabited this city, the so-called Cyberabad was a group of very dry, uninteresting villages like Gachibowli, Nalagandala, Lingampalli. I mean, people in the city hardly ever knew about this, but now it seems to me that this part of Hyderabad has become the center of Hyderabad. I mean, so there are shifting centers of a particular city as well. And so when I talk about the pre-medieval period, you will appreciate that all the urban spaces that I will be sharing information with you about are actually spaces technically outside the city limits or the municipal limits of the city of Hyderabad. But at some point in time, they were the heartland of the urban space at, let's say, the first century AD or the 6th century AD, or whichever period we are talking about when we are describing these settlements. So this is a phenomena even today. Surrounding areas of any city begin to get more and more urbanized as time progresses. Now, I would like to begin illustrating what I have to say by making a very simple but important point. It's very ironic that when you visit Golconda, of course, there is the magnitude of the Golconda fort, but very few visitors know that there is a museum called the KB Museum that is housed over there. And there are literally hundreds of sculptural artifacts in this museum that have not been put on display. Well, they are known to the experts, they are known to the archaeologists, and to some extent to some historians. But actually, in fact, this entire collection of artifactual material is really something that tells you about maybe something of it is contemporary to Golconda, but a lot of it is pre-Golconda as well. So there is a kind of a hidden element of what went into the making of the history of what we today call the city of Hyderabad. And what do these images tell us about? They tell us about several religious traditions that were so popular in this region. The Shaivites or Shaivism was a very powerful religious faith. Then at some point in time, Vaishnavism became important. But most significantly, there is the Buddhist and Jain history of this region. And today we have adherents of these faiths living in the present city of Hyderabad. But I mean, in the historical narrative, not much is known in the public memory about these two shamanic traditions of early India, which we have a lot of information about in the settlements around the city of Hyderabad. And based on archaeology, I would like to start by sharing with you some interesting artifacts, and they have to do with the significance of how archaeology as a source of information can be very deep. It can take us into the deep history of a region or a city. If you look at Golconda and Charminar, certainly these are the iconic images that we have of the city that we inhabit. And now I'm going to go behind these images, because even in 1928, when there was the visit of various people to the city of Hyderabad, uh, you found that the environs around Golconda were actually rural. The Time Life magazine has these illustrations of the environment immediately surrounding the Golconda. This is in 1928. So even in 1928, what you have of the environment around Golconda, and if you see it from the ramparts of Golconda Fort, you see an absolutely rural landscape, right? And then this is the KB Museum that I was talking about a minute ago, which has a wonderful artistic sculptural material, of course, to do with the religious beliefs, but also to do with certain hero traditions that were very popular in the region. And we know from the history of the Kakatiyas that hero stones and other such warriors are engraved in the regions around Warangal and elsewhere in the countryside. So also around Golconda, you had a lot of hero stones, and I'll share some of those with you. So there is a time and a place before Golconda, and this I'm slowly moving back in time. And then uh, we tend to absolutely be blank about the fact that there is a prehistory and there is also a proto-history of the city that we live in. So in terms of prehistory, we have what is called the Neolithic Stone Age, which is of course found everywhere in India, but in around Hyderabad at the Kondapur Museum. I'll talk a bit more about Kondapur in a minute. You have wonderful polished Neolithic tools. So also at Patancheru, which is on the museum on the Iktisat campus. And then, sadly, we don't have any rock paintings available to us as only in photographs we have them, because a lot of the rocks have been destroyed around Miapur and this area. But the State Department of Archaeology and Museums had photographed some rock paintings. And there is this visual on the right, which you can see of a bull in ochre color. And so therefore there is this deep history of Stone Age tools, and that means the habitation of the city environs around the city of Hyderabad goes back to prehistoric times. And then in the proto-historic period, you have what is called the Iron Age, and the Iron Age is identified by what are called megaliths. Megaliths are huge funerary monuments found all over South India. But the unique thing about the Telangana megaliths is that you have these monolith stones in the form of a Naga-shaped pillar, or menhir as it is technically called. There are a couple of them. One is here, one is near Warangal, which is very unique to the landscape here. And around Hyderabad, this is on the University of Hyderabad campus where we conducted excavations. But there are a lot of megaliths at Hashmat Pet, which have been excavated at Maulali and several other surrounding areas of Hyderabad. So there is the proto-historic, that is the Iron Age, which is very visible and something that we really do not discuss or even talk about, because our imagination only goes back 400 years. Now, what I want to do is I want to share with you details of three, maybe four settlements around Hyderabad. One of them is called Kondapur. It's about 40 kilometers out of Hyderabad. And then immediately after that, I'll talk about a place called Fanigiri. And then I'll talk about Isaragutta, which is on the Sikandrabad side. And then, of course, I'll wind up with a discussion on Patancheru. So, Kondapur was excavated in 1942 by Ghulam Yazdani, the first Director General of Archaeology under the Nizam's dominion. And the the erstwhile Department of Archaeology and Museums, Government of Andhra Pradesh, had most of the photographs, which we are indebted to them for having shared with us. And then in 2009, the site was excavated again by the Archaeological Survey of India, because this site is so important that it is put directly under the Archaeological Survey of India. So what do we find at Kondapur? There are structures. As you can see, there are circular shrines. There are rectangular and elliptical shaped shrines, which are sometimes called chaityas. Then you have small blocks of what do you call it, furnaces, and what Yazdani called as underground chambers. He couldn't identify what the purpose of these underground chambers was, but definitely there was material that was excavated in these chambers. And then very significantly, Kondapur became famous for the innumerable beads that were found over here. That is about 50,000 or so, which led to a separate book being written on the beads of Kondapur by M.G. Dikshit. And just to give you a kind of a fair comparison, the famous Nagarjun Konda, which all of you know about, has about 780 or so beads. The even more famous Taxila has about close to 1,000 beads. So what were these 50,000 beads being produced in Kondapur? And not only that, the hordes of beads, but also one was able to excavate. Yazdani himself excavated earrings and bangles and other such related material. And of course, the other significant thing about Kondapur is that for the first time in the first century, second century AD, you have large amount of iron tools, not only to be used for agricultural purposes, but also for carpentry and so on, and iron crucibles. So at the bottom over here, you see iron crucibles and iron tools. And right in the center is a very interesting image of something that we call a Lajja Gauri. These Lajja Gauris were headless goddesses found all over the Deccan. Now, why am I mentioning this? I'm mentioning this because amongst archaeologists, there is this huge debate that is going on whether Kondapur should be considered to be a Buddhist settlement, or should we consider it to be a settlement where the Brahmanical faith or Vedic religion was prevalent? Because the 2009 to 11 excavations, this circular shrine that you see was excavated, and a Lajja Gauri was found at the footsteps of this shrine. And you also found very deep pits, which the archaeologists said were Vedic altars, because at the bottom of those pits were ash mounds and so on. So there is this huge thing about designating, giving it a religious designation. But my argument is here that more than identifying it as a Buddhist or Brahmanical settlement, one should really look at it as a cosmopolitan settlement, because if you look at the kind of other material that is found at Kondapur, for example, the Roman ware, pottery, polished pottery of the Roman times, sprinklers, and most importantly, Roman coins of the great Emperor Augustus and Tiberius. And on the left hand, you see that they have got holes on the top. So people were using these coins as jewelry, and they were also making clay imitations of these coins. So the Roman presence through the coins was pretty significant. Apart from the Roman coins, there were other amulets. You have this beautiful Gajalakshmi, an amulet of the Gajalakshmi. So, I mean, all these reflect a kind of a cosmopolitan society. You don't see it particularly to be having one caricature or one kind of character. And these beautiful images, terracotta images, tell you about the people, or especially women in this case, the way they dressed, their hairdos, the jhumkas that they wore, the wonderful hair bands, and other jewelry that they adorn themselves with. And compared to Kondapur, which doesn't have a single image of the Buddha or even of the symbols of the Buddha, here at Fanigiri, you have these fantastic sculptural art. The one on the left is Maya's Dream, a very well-known theme. And on the right, you have the worship of the stupa, the symbol in a symbolic worship. And of course, on to your extreme right, you have viharas. So compared to Kondapur, Fanigiri emerges to be a kind of Buddhist settlement where the monks lived. Now, where is Fanigiri located? It is a little interior, about 100 kilometers from Hyderabad, near Bongir. And Kondapur is about 40 kilometers towards Medak, near Sangareddy. So they are on two different sides of Hyderabad city. But that there was Buddhism that was prevalent during the first few centuries of the Christian era, there is no doubt about that. But to characterize every settlement as Buddhist would be problematic. Right. So in Fanigiri also you find similar terracottas, beautiful crafted terracottas, iron tools of the same period, stucco, and of course beads as usual. So these two settlements, Kondapur and Fanigiri, are of the almost the same period, a century here and there. And I would suggest that Buddhist monks traveling from the coastal Andhra region into what is Telangana and then moving towards the western Deccan would have rested and would have stayed at these settlements before proceeding on in their journeys. So, Kondapur is the earliest urban landscape that we have a lot of information about. Now, moving to Kisaragutta. So, the period that Kisaragutta reflects is the 4th and 5th century AD. Now, everybody knows what is Kisaragutta today. Today, Kisaragutta is a major Shaivite pilgrim center. However, in 1980-86, when Dr. V.V. Krishna Shastri excavated over here, he suggested that Kisaragutta could perhaps be the capital of a dynasty called the Vishnu Kundans. Now, the Vishnu Kundans came to rule Telangana and coastal Andhra after the Shatavahanas, and there is an inscription of the Vishnu Kundans in a colony called Chaitanya Puri in Hyderabad. And of course, there are Vishnu Kundan inscriptions also at Kisara. But the main thing that was excavated as Kisaragutta was a fortification wall. And over here, a very hazy picture of a Yagyashala, and of course, platforms for the performance of sacrifices, and a whole lot of sculptural art pertaining, of course, to the Shaivite religion, Nandi, Parvati, Bhairava, but also an image of Vishnu and Narasimha. And all these now are located in a museum at Kisaragutta. And I forgot to mention that Kondapur also has a museum which can be visited, and that is controlled by the Archaeological Survey of India. And that has a lot of material which visitors can see. But coming back to Kisaragutta, if you have climbed Gutta means hill, right? Like Konda in Kondapur is also a hill. So both these settlements were like on hills, and the The hill at Kesaragutta has at least 100 or more Shivalingas in a destroyed state, you know, covering the hillside. And in 2014, I believe, they found 12 images of Tirthankaras, that is of the Jain faith. So, what I've been trying to suggest right from the beginning is that we also have a lot of data that comes to us about the Jain and the Buddhist faith. And then finally, Patancheru, which was excavated in 1973 on the campus of ICRISAT. There were two villages, Kachireddipalli and Malmur, and they were very unique villages because one was black soil, one was red soil. And what they found over here was the hero stones, Dwarapalas, Nagas and Naginis, images of Bhairava. And there is also the village of Patancheru. And in the village of Patancheru, you have this image of a Buddha sitting in Dhyana Mudra. You also have these huge elephants that mark the entrance into the village. A wonderful image, a decorated image of Nandi, Kubera, and Ganesha. By the way, all this is dated to the Kalyani Chalukyan period and the Western Chalukyan period. It takes us back to at least the 5th century AD and then continues uninterrupted till about the 12th century AD. And these images are housed in the museum at ICRISAT, and some of it is available to us through photographs. And on the campus itself, as well as in the village, you have these very ancient pillars of temples. Now, this settlement continues into Qutub Shahi times and then into Azad Shahi times. And Patna literally means a market town. And Patancheru, therefore, is a Patna on the banks of a Cheruvu. And about Patancheru, I must end by saying that a lot of inscriptions have been found which tell us that at least 800 basadis of the Jains were settled over here. We don't have so much of archaeological evidence, but we have a lot of inscriptional evidence. So this is my journey into the various settlements around Hyderabad. We could talk a lot more about them, go into many more details, but this just gives you a panoramic view of how the evolution of urban spaces around Hyderabad started in the 1st century and, of course, continued right into medieval times. And then, of course, we know what is happening in our contemporary times. So thank you very much.